La la la. We are live. What's up? Hey peeps, what's up? What's happening? What's shaking? Tell us everything. So I'm typing a banner right now so you guys know what we're going to talk about. Why your POV. We're going to talk about why your POV. Who knows what POV is? Is Brooks does.
I know.
I know. I do. I do. I do. I can't
Point
type.
of view. You have to use the hands.
Hey,
It
because
doesn't
you're a
count unless you use
filmmaker.
the hands.
So I'm going to hang. I can't type and talk at the same time. Then
I'll talk. Hello, everybody.
Say hello. Say hello, Brooks. So, Brooks, what do you do? Who are you? Tell us about yourself.
I am a working Hollywood screenwriter that also loves to help other writers in a few different ways. I generally coach. I'm like a life coach for screenwriters in addition to writing my own stuff. So that when I coach other writers, I'm also learning to coach myself better. It's great.
Totally, right?
Yeah.
Yep, it is definitely as you coach, the way to learn something is to teach it. Absolutely, for sure. So let me get the comments up. So if you guys have questions along the way, we can talk about that. So Brooks, tell everybody how we met. I love this
Oh,
story.
I I think we met on LinkedIn. I
We
might have
did.
reached out
It's
to
going to be relevant
you
later.
in general because in part of my sort of organic outreach, and then we found out that a good friend of yours was a student of mine at UCLA Extension,
Yes.
and then we became fast friends and have done I don't know 2 or 3 of uh, these these broadcasts together, and always have a lot of fun. Is that
We
how
did
you
become
remember it?
fast friends.
Yeah.
We did immediately. We were the definition of fast friends. And the thing that I love about this story, and we're going to talk about this as part of your POV and your career and your decisions to what you're going to do, is that teaches screen analysis at UCLA, or was teaching at the time, or had just been teaching. So he has this background, which is very similar to mine, right? We're teaching the same thing. So one might say that we were competitors. But he reached out to me on LinkedIn and was like, hey, I think we do the same thing. We should figure out how to do it together. And I just loved it. And I was immediately like, okay. And at that point, we didn't know that we had this mutual connection. And so it was just, and it was really great because this friend of mine that had been in his course she'd been going through it and we've been talking about it, not knowing who he was at the time. It was before we met. And she's a producer. And so I was saying things like, oh my gosh, your perspective is just like a producer. And she said, that's what he said. It's so great that we had the same perspective to her, because she is a producer and she was coming from that perspective for sure. But it was like, and then so I got to see kind of what he did before I even met him. And so then it was like, we absolutely do a lot of the same things. Now you're coaching more. And we're both coaching in different ways. So, but it definitely, there's synergy there rather than seeming like, there's competition. Because really, I don't care if you do exactly what I do. There's so much room for everyone in this industry. There's like millions of people have writing as a Facebook interest. And so there's just, thousands and thousands of people every year are submitting their screenplay to Nickel and AFF and all these places. And so there's plenty of room for all the writers and all the coaches to help all the writers get their script to the screen. So,
yeah,
guys,
no, it's true. Well, that gets back to point of view, right? It's
yeah, right.
yeah, yeah, there was probably a 95% overlap in terms of sort of objective of that UCLA course and what you were doing. Mid 90%, something close. So I was just curious about how you were going about it in terms of comparing notes, and loved it. Everything you said. I was like, oh, I love that idea. A lot of it was,
you gave us one of the best compliments ever because Brooke said to me, the thing is you guys are you're like the heart-centered version of reading and screenplay analysis. And I was like, yes, we are. Absolutely. That's what we're going for.
Well,
so
that's
sure.
and that's really significant because I think the number one thing in general that slows writers down is fear in all sorts of different forms, and certainly fear of getting notes because they're afraid that somebody's going to. Actually, they're afraid in two ways. They're afraid, number one, that somebody's going, "Oh, you're terrible. You don't know what you're doing. Go home." And especially when somebody is an esteemed analyst of some sort, they're even more scared. And then the other side, they're actually afraid in a deeper way of succeeding. They're afraid of somebody looking like a gatekeeper or whatever, going, "Oh my God, you're amazing, you're a genius, you're going to go. Then they go, I'm a little old me, I can't do it, I'm afraid. So,
All the
so
imposter syndrome kicks in for sure. Yep.
that's right. That's right. So that fear happens in both ways. So your approach of being so friendly and supportive is just, it's phenomenal. Is really helpful for writers.
Well, thank you. And for those of you that are new to us here at Hollywood Gatekeepers, we train people how to be expert readers for the film industry, how to write coverage, which is kind of like a book report. So you read a screenplay and then you write coverage, meaning you write like, what is the script about? And then you write what works in the script and what needs work in the script. But we approach it from a place of you are there as a job of service. There's no hierarchy. There's no, you're not, there's just, you guys are all working together. You, the writer, the producer, who's ever trying to get that script to the screen, you are there to focus on that story and get it as good as it can possibly be by inspiring that writer to reach in and find whatever greatness and hidden gem they have inside, because they do. Every writer, for those of you that are writers, you all have a hidden gem of some story inside that you're going to tell in your own way. And we as readers are there to help you pull that out. So it's really, really fun. And we're having a great time doing so. And so in doing that, we love bringing guests in here to talk about the different ways that they do this. And Brooks is the spectacular guest. We've done this a couple of times and we can riff about it all day long. So brace yourself. So tell us a little bit about your coaching and what it is that you do with your coaching.
So, yeah, so I was one takeaway from what you were talking about in terms of the way you see that game. In terms of being collaborative and just helping. When I first started, I made movies with my friends and it was very team oriented. Best idea wins. Let's just make this thing. It's going to be awesome. I'm also a team sports guy too. So that's sort of my creative base. But then I went to NYU Film School. I wrote and directed a few independent features and then pivoted to mostly screenwriting about, 15 years ago or so. And then got that opportunity to teach at UCLA Extension maybe 8 years ago. And I did that and it was fun, but it was really formal, for good and for bad. And I was kind of like, well, what if I, there's 20 students in the class and I was happy to teach any of them and it was fine. But I was like, what if I really connected with just like 2 or 3 that we really were intensely sort of kindred spirits together? And like, what's the biggest impact I could make on them? And that really changed everything for me. Then I was aware of, the sort of life coach model in general. I was like, what? And I had this whole separate life that for 20 years I'd been into, actually my whole adult life, been into psychology and personal growth. I would just do it. I would take this seminar and that seminar. I was fascinated with that sort of thing. And I did it for years and became a very good facilitator with, people have really intense issues and just listening and holding space and helping just for the fun of it as a volunteer or whatever. But then I realized, oh, wait a minute. If I like apply all those skills to actually teaching the craft and I put it together, I'm a life coach for screenwriters, man, I can help them get amazing results. So I started doing that. And the first program was basically this 5-month one-to-one deep dive program. Plus there's a group coaching called Component, where they basically in 5 months, I teach them how to go from like talented amateur to professional screenwriter. And there's all sorts of pretty cool metrics to show how effective it is. Yeah. And so that was one program. And then another program was like, okay, if you're already writing at the professional level through my program or elsewhere, how do you get anybody to pay attention to you in Hollywood, right? So there was a second program called Unleash Your Superpower to get people to sort of basically learn how to build long-term relationships, which is the skill set that I used to meet you. And I just knew that there was ways that we can get in touch, and then we just ended up hitting it off. And there's a third program that I'm doing right now. There's actually a free workshop for that new program that starts on Saturday. We'll talk more about it later. But it addressed the third big problem. The first one is like, how do I write at the professional level, at least for screenwriters, right? How do I take a professional script and get attention for it? And then the third problem is, how do I make money along the way? Because, there's that theory that it takes 10,000 hours to become great at something, right? And I think there's a lot of truth to it, certainly in the screenwriting game. And so that's a lot of hours. And what are you doing along the way? And is there a way for you to actually get paid while you're clocking in those hours to develop as a screenwriter, right? So that to me was like, that's a third burning question that my screenwriting peeps are really struggling with. And I know I can help them with that because I helped them with my own side business. Well, I did it with my own side business, making just a few $1,000 in consulting for a year to over 100,000 in a 12-month period. After I left UCLA, it was just zoom. So, and it was just about thinking. And the thing is that there isn't anything fundamentally different that I did in that period that I couldn't have done like 5 or 10 years prior. I just thought about my own POV differently and my own value differently, and just, learned how to, there was business things that I was interested in studying. And I sort of interpreted what businessy people were doing for me as a creative. And I was like, oh, yeah, they've got some good ideas.
Yeah,
Business
totally.
people I should
Well,
know
and we
about.
have that in common. And so,
Yeah.
as you're teaching, we're both teaching story analysis, script analysis, and within the Insider Track program, which is one of our programs where you become a reader, you're learning how to become a reader, and then we have a membership. And so, within our Insider Track, we're doing these weekly sessions, and people are they're not talking about their questions aren't so much about like how do you analyze a screenplay or what is a log line. It was like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do next. It was like, and I was like, oh, okay. So then I just kind of started talking about it and then realized, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to understand it. So I went and got certified as a life coach. And I think we both have, Brooks and I tend to geek out over this love that we have for personal development. We both have that love. So we're constantly like, hey, have you heard Alex Hormozi was someone, he was like, hey, have you heard? And I was like, Alex Hormozi, like, we were both like, yes, like we both kind of discovered him at the same time. Like we're constantly talking about different people that we find that are inspiring, both in the industry and in just personal development. So and in business too. We both love business. We both love marketing. We both love just the whole thing. And I think that is a writer's brain. I really feel like marketers, a lot of marketers, the good ones, in my opinion, have a writer's brain. And so I always say that you guys that, if you're readers, you're writers. So if you don't want to write screenplays, that's fine. You can read screenplays and not write them. But for those of you that are also screenwriters, I always say that all of us in here are writers. And so we have the secret weapon of being able to write. And that is so valuable in so many places. And so, finding your POV and what Brooke's talking about, and we talked a little bit, we were kind of gabbing before we came on about skill stacking and how you can take your POV, the things that you already know, and combine it with your ability to write. And whether it's writing screenplays, writing coverage, whatever it might be, and combine it into something that is just fantastic. So what are your thoughts on, on personal development, right? It's really important. Well, and I want to get your thoughts on that for a second, but I want to throw in there that we also constantly talk about in our screen reader program about how the idea of personal development and getting your life in order. And I bring in guests that talk about anxiety and all kinds of things so that your life can be as even keeled as possible. And we optimize for contentment, not necessarily for happiness, but for being able to manage the highs, the lows, the messy, the lovely, all of it, because it's all life. And then, being able to do that, you can create so much more authentic characters if you have a handle on your personal development. It makes it so your screenplays are more authentic, your characters are easier to understand. And so as a reader, being able to help a writer with those kind of characters, and as a writer, understanding personal development to create these authentic characters is so huge. So that's a big part of it as well. So all of that kind of goes back to POV, right? So what are your thoughts on all of that, Brooks? Tell us.
Ooh, well, there's a lot there. So which way to go? So, wow. So that was what was so exciting about this idea of helping people make money along the way to being a screenwriter is it actually makes them a better writer, because because charging people for money is a beautiful accountability system. Because you're either getting the results or you're not. And that's why life coaching is really such an exciting thing, because, there's some life coaches that get paid $100,000 or $200,000 for a year. And you're like, who's paying them $200,000? And it's somebody A that has that much money, and somebody B that knows they're going to get more than $200,000 of value back. And so that's what's so exciting. It really, when you start to explore your passions in the marketplace, it's not, we get to choose how we do that, have that experience. And it doesn't have to be slimy or like Glengarry Glen Ross salesman. It can really be just an extension of your passion and how you're already helping people.
I just have to throw in there that most people say car salesman, but no, the writer, says Glengarry Ross car salesman. That totally makes sense, right? Totally right.
That's if people don't know, that's a David Mamet play, then movie in like the early 90s, about these really heartbroken salespeople that were just trying to basically steal money from people. And it was an amazing piece. Anyways, so it's not that really, guys, when you're doing business these days in a way that's really helpful, you're really just helping other people. Like people think of business and they think of suits and this and that, and maybe tycoons and maybe exploitation. I invite you to not think of it at all in that way. Literally just think about it as helping people in trading. You're just trading some sort of value for some sort of money, or even trading, bartering. You can do, there's all sorts of trades. It's more like playing Monopoly and making trades than it is like any sort of other experience. So, and when there's a thing you said before that I thought was interesting about, I don't know. I'm going to go with this other thing. You said too many interesting things for too much. That was a problem.
Well, talking about the idea of personal development also makes you create authentic characters. I think that's a big one.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you're getting into what motivates somebody to buy something or just to negotiate something, really any facet of it forces you, when there's money on the line, to get better at it, to have more integrity about it. So when you do that, your screenwriting or screenwriting analysis organically gets sharper and better. You just can't write good characters unless you understand like motivation and subtext in different ways, and you sharpen that sword wonderfully with sort of business endeavors.
That is so fascinating. The other thing that's super fascinating about that is that when you start to charge people, and you charge people for your services, for writing, for coaching, for screen reading, whatever it might be, it does hold you accountable for sure. You have to step up if you're going to charge someone for it. There's something that's very tangible about that. But the other thing that happens is that you sort of develop the thick skin that you need in order to survive in any kind of successful career, because people will push back if they don't feel that there's value in what you're selling, and they'll push back very vocally on social media or whatever. It took us a while. We don't even really see this anymore. We see it a little bit in our earlier stuff, where people just say, you're just a scam. That was a big one we got when we first started. And I got it. We were online, we were talking about Hollywood, but we just had to hang in there and be like, nope, we're not. We're super sincere. We're really, this is legit. I swear. But it was I had to develop, because at first I took that personally, and I had to go like, oh no, they're just one fear. Like you said, fear is so huge, and anyone who combats and says and comes back with all these reasons why you're trying to take advantage, typically they're just speaking from fear. And I've actually had people that they start their sentences with, I'm just afraid that ... and then they think that they're saying that you're a scam, and they think that they're kind of calling you out, but really they're calling themselves out with those first few words, so it's like you have to learn kind of how to step up and really own what you do, and stand behind your work and say, no, I charge for my work. My work has value. I have value, and I'm going to stand behind that. And it's such a beautiful way of developing your self-worth, developing your ability to stand tall, do what you're going to do, and come from that service place. So if you know that you're providing a good service, then there's no shame in charging for it. And the more that you do that, the more it just snowballs into people getting more. And the more that people invest in you, they're investing in themselves. So someone who invests in Brooks's program and your program, they're then they come out with a screenplay, and then they're suddenly selling their screenplay, and they're out doing things. They're getting all this value of it. And it's just this snowball thing that's so, so great. Right. So, and I see you guys posting, but Tony Robbins, and I absolutely adore Cathy Heller. I think she is just such the real deal. She's so amazing talking about songwriting. She doesn't do songwriting as much anymore, but just about what kind of artist you can be. She's amazing for sure. Definitely check her out.
So here's one thing. Now I'm taking notes as you talk, so I'm not going to lose track anymore. I have all sorts of points we can go to. So I'll say a quick Tony Robbins story. One thing I love about him, that really struck me, related to this idea of how to tap into these skills you didn't realize you had. He's got that great documentary. I think it's called Nobody's Guru or something like that. Mm-hmm. I loved it. Really wonderful. And what I realized he was doing in a room of 5,000 people was basically this sort of personal growth facilitation that I'd been doing for 20 years in my men's group, just for free with 7 dudes in LA in a circle here, right? And I know a dozen people that are as good, if not better, at facilitating than Tony Robbins. Just in terms of just the way you sort of hold space for somebody and don't judge them, but help them sort of lead their own process and where they want to go. Tony does it amazingly. And he does it rock star style in front of a big room, and really cries and ever. But it was oh, he's great, and it's no different than actually this other whole skill set. So that was a really interesting sort of bridge towards me realizing that this was something that fits. So, and then now getting this idea of skill stacking, which is really interesting. that was a skill that I had that I just didn't realize. That I sort of, once I kind of put it together, it was like, oh my God, that changed my life, and then I've been changing other people's lives too.
And so funny. Okay, go ahead.
No,
No,
then I'll let you get in. To this idea of skill stacking, there's a really wonderful YouTube channel called "You Suck at Cooking." I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's really delightful, and to me, it's a very instructive example about skill stacking. Because if you check it out, it's called "You Suck at Cooking."
You suck at cooking.
You suck, you suck at cooking, right? It's a cooking show. Every episode is like, hey, we're going to teach you how to make like these funky kind of brownies or this or that or the other thing, and they're actually good cooking recipes. Then it's basically comedy. It's joke. It's got some pretty playful YouTuber type editing quality, so filmmaking qualities, and then he usually does like an a cappella singing gig. It's pretty good. So it's like these 4 different skills, right? And none of them are like world class, but all of them are decent enough, and together it's totally singular. So whoever this person is, I don't know them personally, but like my kids love the shows, I love the show. I mean, it's really just, it's such a beautiful reinvention of who this person is. Now, I don't know what he would have done before the internet, but like it was such a beautiful way of skill stacking to create something that's so singular and so delightful.
Well, they're so random. There's 4 things that you wouldn't necessarily think would go together. So, and it's so random. And I love that they're just throwing that together in their own little recipe, right? Throwing that out there.
Yeah.
And we just did this within our membership last week, where we did skill stacking. We did breakout rooms, and everyone kind of looked at, what's something that you already know that you're bringing into becoming. So they're learning how to become readers, but then also what's something that you already know besides that. And then what is, we talked about Alex Hormozi. He talked about skill stacking and talking about Jay-Z and saying that Jay-Z started his skills by understanding music, and then he started writing songs, and then pretty soon he was learning how to promote himself, and then he started a label learning how to promote others. And so he's building his skills as he moves on, and then he gets Beyonce. So we were like, okay, so what is a skill stack you already know? Let's toss in your ability to write screenplays or read and analyze screenplays. Let's throw in some job that you had that you don't think is really related, but it actually is. Like, what have you already done? What do you already know? And then kind of think about what is it that you want to be? Who's someone that you would want to emulate? Who's a mentor out there that you think is doing what you want to be doing? Look at that, because if they're doing it, you can do it. There's no reason why not. So putting that in there, and then who or what is your Beyonce? Like, who or what is the thing that you're reaching for ultimately? And so when you start skill stacking and throwing these things on top, like, so many things open up and become possible. It's really astounding. So,
yeah, I love that. Well, that's actually the kind of a main thrust of that new program that I'm doing. I mean, the main program is called The Hero's Journey to Wealth, but that free workshop on Saturday is just it's how to get paid to write in 5 weeks, right? Just some tactical ideas, and then also to get you thinking bigger about this, because the number one thing that slowed me down and really kind of dampened my enjoyment of my life was I was very narrowly focusing on I've got to make it as a writer full time, blah blah blah, and it was so narrow and so specific. And you talked previously about like that roller coaster of Hollywood, and having that super narrow focus. Even though I was 1,000% committed to that narrow channel, it put me right on that roller coaster, and it was freaking out. If things went well, everything was great. If things were going bad, everything was terrible, and then up again. So what I realized was, if I think more broadly, like, yes, I am writing screenplays and getting paid a lot of money, and it's great. And yet, because it's a roller coaster business, I got to get off the effing roller coaster and sit beside it and just watch from a close distance it going up and down, but not being emotionally hooked into it, just seeing it. And then once from that side, it's like, okay, more broadly speaking, getting a little deeper here, from my soul unfolding. Yes, one of the ways I want to sort of let my soul unfold is in my stories for a large audience. But what about this other side of me that has been doing personal growth stuff for other people for years? Yeah. What if I also tap into that and then teach people how to do the thing that I do as a screenwriter? And it all came together. And what happened was, I became, like you're saying before, I became a better screenwriter, became a happier person. I actually had more time, more money, more all the things, because I stacked those skills on top of each other into a way. So that's how I did that, is actually what I'm teaching in that program. And you get a taste of it for free on Saturday for It's like a 90-minute little free workshop, but it's
So you're doing a 90-minute free workshop on Saturday, September, what is that, the 24th?
yeah, that'll be the 24th.
And what's it called again? Just so we get that title back out there because it's so good.
Called How to Get Paid to Write in 5 Weeks.
I love it. How to get paid to write in 5 weeks. So it's so specific, right? Talk about your SMART goals. It's like really measurable in terms of like figuring out what exactly that you can do. So when Brooks told me he had this program, I was like, oh, we need to talk about this. This is so fantastic. And I just always know that whenever you come in, we share so many things in common, and we are both so committed to. We really do want you guys to write. We want you guys to make money. We want you guys to be happy. We really are very sincere about that. So I'm all down for finding any ways that I can to help you do that. So it's just really fun. And then, and I see June's in here. I'm not a writer, but this is helpful for me today. I love it, June. June's an actor. She's actually in a movie that I wrote, and she's coming out hopefully soon. And she's spectacular and has one of the best attitudes of anyone I've ever met.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is that like my community is mostly screenwriters, right? So I speak to them, but this is totally applicable to anybody, because anybody who's got a soul, right? Which is all of us. So, and it's like, where's your soul happy? Like, what are your, if you like to perform, awesome. That's like one particular box, and it's a beautiful box. And if you can do that full time or whatever you want, great. But what's going to happen is, literally, even for somebody like Tom Cruise or anybody, there's times when things are stacked up, and there's times when it's a little slower, right? And so if you think of your soul's unfolding, like what you want to do and how you want to show up in the world, a little in that box and around it. So don't ignore that box. Definitely serve that box, but then also expand so you're also serving outside of it. And not in a way like, oh crap, I got to punch a clock, I got this crappy day job or whatever. But like, no. Like, I love coaching as much as I love writing, and I love marketing for coaching and screenwriting as much as I love writing. And it's because I'm coming from that soulful place. And if I feel like it's kind of BS or I'm forcing or whatever, I just back off. So I listen for the arrows that point me towards my deepest passion and connectivity and joy. And if I'm not feeling that, I just back away. And so it's a weird thing, because you're like, well, then I would never do anything or whatever. But like, if you can design your life to really be purpose driven, passion driven. And what ends up happening is, because of the skill stacking thing, you end up organically differentiating yourself in the marketplace and getting paid more money because you're a specialist.
Absolutely. And it's that, and the other thing that's really curious that ends up happening when you do this, and so there's SMART goals, which are, I don't know, specific, measurable, actionable, something and something time with R, I don't know. And then because the reason I don't know is because for us, they're smile, melt, allow, relax, trust. So I took, all those things are good. You want to have goals, and you want them to be measurable, and you want to be time-based, and you want all of that. But you also have to have that ability to, like what you're saying, live in the back off if it's too much, or back off and live in that place of being able to just relax about it. And the interesting thing, and both Brooks and I have this in common, that we coach, we have these programs where you're teaching writers, I'm teaching readers. We're really like focused on story, like writing these good stories, get your screenplay out. And then we're also writers. We both have our own projects going. And the really funny thing is, when I first started this, I had some concerns about, I'm never going to be writing again. I'll be so focused on this. But my writing career has skyrocketed since I've started this, which is really what's a happy accident, right? It's like really interesting. And I think part of it is because I'm so much happier. For one thing, I'm having so much fun, and I'm watching my students do great things, and they're getting engaged, and they're having like this is so much fun watching these people's lives change and being involved in this community. And there's something about it that helps me relax and do other things. And now I'm writing even more and doing more movies, and it's spectacular, right? Like, how has being a coach or whatever improved your own writing?
Well, so two ways. It improves me as a writer, because I'm helping other, these people that I'm coaching, I'm helping them focus on like the force multiplier creative choices, the optimal minimal, the things you can do that makes the biggest impact, and then to not worry about the BS that's actually not going to matter. So I do that all day long, and that just makes me apply it better myself in my own work. So that's number one. But number two, just knowing that more broadly, my soul is going to be happy today and tomorrow, and I get to serve my people, my audience, and these other writers and all these other people. So it's like, so I'm not like freaked out like I was before. Even when I got into the professional level as a writer, because I was on that roller coaster. When things were going down, I was freaking the F out. I was hammering my representation, going like, let's get this deal closing. So here's a concrete example. I have a deal, screenwriting deal that started in like January and literally could have been wrapped up in like a couple of weeks, right? But the producers I was working with, really great people, got involved with this other project, another high profile project, which is really awesome, but it just delayed ours, right? The old version of me, when I was like, oh my God, I got to get this thing to close so I can feed my family, blah, blah, blah. It was like, the energy was just, it was crazy. The current version of me literally was like, yeah, I've got that one. I've got 3 or 4 other projects, and I've got this coaching bit. It's like, it was so easy. So when just right now, finally, it was like 9 months later, now the deal's actually done. Contracts are closing like this week. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a lot of money. Great. That's cool. But it's like everything's so easy breezy because I designed it that way. I figured out existentially how I get off the roller coaster and stand beside it and just watch it go up and down and not actually ride it. So it's that emotional differentiation, because what most people will do is if they're dealt a bad hand, they feel bad. If they're dealt a good hand, they feel good. And until you practice sort of breaking that pattern so that you don't live in crazy town when things are going, but you have a deliberate perceptual differentiation from that objective reality. So that you, again, it's not way out there, but it's a harmony that you choose. And so it's really powerful. Even on my worst days, it's not nearly as bad as it was before. And then my good days, I soar higher than ever.
Right. And even on the good day, it's that thing of, even when things are spectacular, you don't have that sense. I mean, I used to have a sense of it being like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like a sense of disbelief almost at how amazing it was, as opposed to accepting both. Like, yep, sometimes it doesn't go so well and sometimes it's amazing. And so that if you have a disbelief about how amazing it is, then that's sort of, subconscious saying that you don't believe that it should be that way. And it should. There's no reason it can't be. So it's like being able to stay in that zone of like not things being too extremely, big on each side of that.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because I remember used to having a fear, like when things were really good, I was like, oh no,
other shoe's going to drop.
Yeah, this is going to end at some point.
And that's how that voice sounds. The other shoe's going to drop in a minute. It's in my head going, hey, better watch out. So I have to just, you want all those voices. They help keep you safe and they stop you from stepping in front of a speeding car. But you take all those voices that are like telling you no, and you put them in the back seat of the car and you strap them into their car seats and you don't let them drive. You let them along for the ride. We're all going to go together. All the voices that are saying, yay, it's possible. No, it's not. But I'm going to drive the car and decide the route I'm going to take. So it's like being able to just sort of incorporate all of that. And then that also, again, put all that back on the page. Crazy Town can be on the page. And you can make the characters freak out. And they can express all that emotion that you're freaking about.
That's right. The drama goes on the page, and the creative process is pretty steady and flowing and easy.
Totally. Yeah. Someone asked, do you do any live coaching? All of our stuff is virtual. I'm sorry, I can't see your name. Some people I can see your name. Anae, I can see your name for sure. But some people I can't. So I'm not sure who asked that. But do you do any in-person coaching? I don't know if you do.
No, although we had a really cool gathering of my LA program people a couple of weeks ago. What the funniest thing about that was? I mean, I know some of these people for 6 years, and I'd never seen them outside the box. So the weirdest thing was I saw them in 3 dimensions, and some people were actually like tall. I was like, I don't know you're tall. It was so weird, but it was great. But no, and we might do like an in-person like retreat sort of thing.
Yeah, I definitely want to be adding that as well, for sure.
But for the most part, no, it's all virtual. People all over the world. It's just more convenient.
Yeah, for sure. And it means, I love too that, and we both were talking about, we have Gary, I don't know if you're here, but we have a mutual person that's in both our programs. And so it's really fun to be able to be like, hey, Gary's in your program, he's in my program. Like, Gary, we both know this person and he's amazing. We both talked about how wonderful you are. So if you're here, I'm not going to tell if you're here, but it's just really, it's really, really fun to like, and he's in London, which is so great. I absolutely love that. So we have, people from all over the place, and it's really fun. But I do we had talked about right before the pandemic, we were actually planning, hopefully, and we were trying to plan for the fall of 2020 to do some kind of a tag on the LA Film Festival that was a live event. And then the LA Film Festival disbanded. And we're like, oh, okay, it won't be there. And then 2020 happened. And so haven't gotten back to it yet. But definitely it's on our radar to do some kind of retreat or something at some point. We do want to do that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I like the way Brooks thinks too, right? Really. So what's the harmony you choose? I'm not sure what you mean by that. The cushion? Like what is the thing we do to keep
I think she was referring to how that idea of how I made that existential shift from I feel bad, or my relationship's bad, or my money's bad, so I will feel bad, or objective reality is whatever, and I feel good. So here's a really interesting thing about sort of what I'm talking about. Like I would, even in my like men's group thing, I would, during the lockdown and the riots and all those things were going on, those guys in the men's group would take it hard. They just were, you could see them. Things were really heavy. And I would show up mindful about how the world was like, taking some hits. But I was even keeled. And it was because I would take just enough news and then not too much, right? And I think those guys were overdosing on news. So here's exactly how I do it. I'll give you a very brief overview. I'm actually going to do a little course on this at some point. It's basically, but what I did was I started tracking my happiness. I don't know if I ever told you this story. So I got to this point where I had a friend who was a TV writer, and he was like, you know what? I just got this job to write for this TV show, and I didn't like work hard at all. There's no effort. It just came to me. I was like, what? What? You don't have to hustle? That's even possible?
Where's Brooks? What have you done with Brooks?
Yeah. It was like whatever. So that was back then. And then slowly I was like, oh, hold on a second. This is, there's something here. And then I started learning. And so then I started, okay. And I got to one point, and it was, law of attraction stuff, but sort of a more grounded version of law of attraction. I said, hold on. What if I start tracking how I feel? On a 10-point scale, I got up 9 o'clock in the morning. If like, I'm feeling terrible, I'm a 2. Or like, I'm feeling great, I'm a 7 or an 8 or 9, whatever. But I just put a number down, and then like an hour later, set a timer, and it was like, oh, how do I feel now? Oh, I'm a 6. I would just track it, right? So I did maybe 12 of them on a given day. And then I would kind of summarize the morning, afternoon, and evening. I did day 2, day 3. I was just exploring this. And I did it for about a week, and it was really amazing. But I didn't there was no judgment. I was just like, yeah, I feel like crap, or like, yeah, I feel okay. And then after the week, my numbers started rising. So I probably started off averaging 6.5 or 7. By the end of 1 week, I was probably at 8 average. It's really interesting. Consistently 8. Not perfectly, but like mostly. Right. And then I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I started tweaking. I go, okay, week 2, whatever my number is, I said, let's say I was a 3. I was like, can I get to like 3.5 or 4? What is something I can do? Maybe like just take a deep breath, like just, maybe stretch, whatever. But like I slowly tried to just not like jump 5 points, but just like a little bit. And so what ended up happening was I realized, oh, I have more power in my perception of objective reality than I was totally using. And then once I got good at that, my numbers went like consistently up to like 9s. And I did that for like a month. And so here's some practical real world ways that so I did that as sort of a game. I like to track things. And again, I'm a personal growth geek. So I was like waiting this. So, but here's what happened. I was at that point in my life, I have 2 kids and a wife, and like they'd always leave the lights on. And I would go, oh, come on, turn off the light, let it cranky dad, right? And then I was like, well, hold on a second. Why am I choosing to respond to that in that way? Because that was like low vibing myself. And I was like, well, what if I just, because grumbling about it wasn't helping anyway. They still come back to goddamn light. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to respond like joyfully. So they would leave the lights on. I go, oh, you know what? Click, I get to turn it off. Click, click, click. So like every time I clicked it off, I let myself feel good about it, right? So then it was just a way of sort of keeping up to high vibe. And then, so here's another medium size. Then my wife was like, look, can you help me do the goddamn dishes? In the weekend, please, I'm busy. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do the dishes. And then I was like, well, hold on a second. How come I don't want to do the dishes? What am I bringing to the dishes that makes it like this crappy chore? Like, what is really the difference between doing dishes and like a yoga routine or a meditation class?
Exactly.
And I was like, oh, well, what if I just, so then I put on some good music or a
Yeah.
YouTube clip and I washing the dishes and I was like effing zenned out in the kitchen doing the dishes.
So good.
So that's a medium thing. And then here's a big one, right? So that was a tiny one with the lights, a medium one with the dishes. And every weekend I do the dishes. I love it. The third one was I got my appendix, my appendix burst. So I was like, oh crap, that you don't get taken care of, you could die. So
Right.
go to the emergency room. I'm scared. And once they go, yeah, it's appendix, you'll get it out. And part of me is like, low vibing. And I was like, oh, well, hold on a second. Like, am I serious about this or what? What can I create? And then I was like, oh, I'm going to be in the hospital for like 2 days. People are going to be waiting on me hand and foot. I don't have to be here. This is awesome. And when I do the surgery, they're going to hit me with like some lot of good drugs. This is like awesome. And from that point on, it was great. It was a great experience.
Totally.
So that's how I made that existential shift. And that was I'm telling you guys, it sounds weird, but that was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I've been like cruising at 9.5 out of 10. Not perfectly, right? I get back, arguments with my wife or whatever. I'm a human being, but like really consistently high level vibe because I practiced shifting it. Cool, huh?
Well, and the thing is that the thing that is sort of shocking is that it's not that hard, is that it's little tiny incremental things. It's like those moments when you have a moment and you're upset and you're maybe crying about something or whatever, and then someone makes you laugh. Someone says something and you end up and you're kind of laughing, even though you're in so much pain. Even when you're grieving, I've had these moments of, I helped a friend, she survived ovarian cancer, and we had so many dire moments on this journey where we would just start laughing because it just got so much that we just couldn't even deal with it anymore. And it just became funny. And so it was like, because this was real, life or death stuff. But the really interesting thing about that is it changes it would change our state and we'd be able to focus on the next moment in a little bit better way. And it isn't like people, I think we think that we need to have these big changes, or there's a whole thing about proximity changing, that you think if you move or you make this proximity change or you leave a relationship, that's going to be a thing, but you take you with you. So it's like being able to make these just slight adjustments of turning on the light with like, I'm so glad I have a family, as opposed to being, what's wrong with them? It's just changing that thought, just one iota. And it makes such a difference. And cleaning is a great one too, because I started domestic podcasting is what I call it. I turn on my favorite podcast and it just goes like that as I clean and listen to and get some business advice or whatever as I do this. So it's not this big incremental heavy lifting. It's these little tiny things, and it seems sort of Pollyanna-ish and weird and whatever, but it is like the other kind of really tangible thing to do is to surround yourself with improve your 5, as they say, like surround yourself. This is why Brooks and I connect so deeply, like because we share these like values, right? Can surround yourself with people that have that value. And it doesn't mean that, and I don't mean that you have to move a proximity thing. I mean, instead you could just listen to a podcast. It doesn't have to be that you need to change the people in your life necessarily. Just add some people in there, listen to podcasts of people that inspire you, and you'll start changing your thoughts and your mannerisms if you start listening to the people that are doing the things that you want to do. And so then if you do have toxic people in your life, then maybe you might want to think about making some changes. But once you're really improving that 5, and if you have people that are constantly telling you, especially as artists, if you have those people that are like, when are you going to get a real job? They sound just like the other person that's like, you're going to drop. Like, I call those the wonk people. Like, yeah, right. Like, you're really going to do that? Like those kinds of people, being able to mock them in your head so that their voice doesn't have weight to you is all I'm saying. Is that so that that voice of someone who's doubting you, just come in here and we'll tell you all day long that it's all possible. So just, find those people that are going to tell you all day long it's all possible so that you can counterbalance the wonk people that don't have faith in you. And that's more about them than you, for sure.
I have a pretty good story for that, because it's really about it's normalizing what you want, that dream life, that having the money and the time and just the relationships and the opportunities that you really want. Be around people who have that, and it becomes more normal. Yes. So one sort of related thought. I grew up in the Hamptons, but as a local, right? So I was like, would bust tables for celebrities and like park their cars, like Steven Spielberg had a house that was, like 10 or 15 minutes away from my house, right? Like he was right on the beach, and I was not quite that close to the beach. But it was effectively like he could have been on the moon, I mean,
Right.
it
Yeah.
literally just seemed like what he was doing was completely otherworldly.
Yeah.
And so it was, so he was really close proximity, but just, like, what, how do you like tell stories and people pay money for that? I mean, what the, I mean, it made no sense. It didn't feel normal to me, even though he literally was like right there.
Right there.
So it was, so I mean, it's really interesting. This actually might be one of the biggest obstacles to everybody listening to this is facing between whatever their next level is, whether it's money, love, really anything. There's something about us that feels like our current stage is sort of safe enough, normal enough, or whatever, but that next level feels a little too scary, a little too crazy, a little too whatever. So we need to, the way to get to that next step is to find a way to see that threshold guardian or whatever and soften it or move past it or normalize it. And just like you said, podcasts are great, or just hanging out with people that are already there or close to there or committed to getting there. And be really careful about people that are just, again, send love to everybody. And there's no, you're not better than somebody else because you have more emotional IQ or whatever, right? They're perfect on their path. You're perfect on your path. And yet, if you are around people that are low vibing you, it generally makes it more difficult for you to sort of be high viber, high vibe, and sort of move to that next place because it takes courage to move that. It takes some real sort of inner fortitude or conviction to sort of
Yeah.
go, you know what?
There's so many places to go where you can find it. High vibe. I love high viber. I think we need t-shirts. There's
Yeah,
so many places that you can go to find it. There's so many podcasts and courses, and there's just so much free content out there and YouTube channels. There's so much available to you. There's so many meditation channels and all of those
yeah.
things of being able. I love the tracking your number. That's a big one.
Hmm.
And you guys are writers. You have that secret weapon. Just write. Sit down and write anything, journal, like getting those, those voices, out on the page of those. If you're frustrated or whatever, my journal, I actually write in a journal and then write over the same place and then write over the same place. You can't even read it. It's just a big black, but that's like just getting out any kind of frustrations so that I'm not carrying them around anymore. I'm letting them go and they're out on the page. And there's something about that is really freeing. So they're just little tiny things, right? Like turning the light switch on in a different way, doing the dishes in a different way, listening to podcasts, journaling things out. But that's where you get rid of that angsty stuff. So then you can become even keeled. And then you combine that with your skill stacking and anything's possible.
I have another hack, personal growth hack. I think you and I do this. Called word copying, right? It's upgrading word phrases. So instead of saying things like hustle or hard work, you can say time on task, inspired action, full focus. You don't want to make it bullshitty at all, right? You want to make it feel authentic to you. Right? And some of the stuff can get super flowery or whatever, or woo-woo. But like the stuff that you grew up with almost certainly is super low vibe. For good intentions, but just be aware of the people that you are listening to or whatever that have a language that feels softer, more flowing, more inviting, more exciting, and then slowly move your own language choices in that direction in a way that feels authentic, not again BS, but an authentic step in that direction, and then and be around people who might go, hell, you said this, what about that? Did you ever listen to Abraham Hicks' Law of Attraction?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's when I'm really feeling low vibe. That's usually my go-to.
Yeah, she's super high vibe, but she says wonderful things like contrast. Like if you're having a difficult time in life, you say, well, you think about it as contrast, which is really sort of a neutral way of going, oh. And she's really great at saying the contrast that happens actually sets up the really beautiful thing that comes on the other side of the contrast.
You have to know what you don't want in order to know what you do want. And I absolutely love all of that. Yeah. And she has so many hacks and tricks, and like there's so many good things that just that's definitely a go-to when I'm.
Well, those her YouTube videos are really masterful because they basically, she's got 1 million of them. They're all doing the same damn thing, right?
Yeah,
they're like 10 minutes, 12 minutes. Someone's like, but Abraham, I can't figure my life out because I'm whatever. And she's like, well, basically feel good about what you want, and then it'll come to you. Like, oh, and the next person's like, Abraham, but I can't figure out my love life. Well, think about how awesome it's going to be when you get it, and then start feeling that, and then it'll come. Oh, okay, fine. And literally, it's just transformation after transformation. Which, by the way, my friends, in the storytelling game, that's what we're doing.
Yep.
You're in Act 1, and they're miserable about love or
Mhm.
relationship or money or about whatever, and then we take them on a step-by-step process through that transformation experience till at the end they're definitively better, or they die trying to get better.
Absolutely. And even if they do die trying, they die, there's some redemption in that in
That's
a
right.
way. So it's like, and that's our job. And that's why the personal development thing is so important as writers. I really, really wholeheartedly feel that. And the more that you understand personal development and these kind of hacks and these kind of tricks, then you can write characters that either are or are not doing those. You can write a character who's absolutely not doing that and is almost frustratingly not doing that. And so it can be, you can create because you have an understanding of what's making people tick. And that's authentic characters are the just number one reason why people love movies is they identify with someone in that movie, regardless of the story. When they identify with those characters,
That's right.
that's everything. And when you write authentic characters, it makes all the difference for
That's
sure.
Right. That's right. Well, yeah. As a writer, we're being really specific to our own experience in a way that feels specific to the audience, and that's how we feel with our favorite movie. Like, oh, they're telling my story, right? Because there's a specificity there. It's really beautiful. Do you want to put a link to the
Yes, I do. Do you have it? I didn't get it from you.
I can get it.
Let's see. Send it to me in the comments.
Okay, I'll pull it up for you.
We forgot to do that before. I was going to get it from you before we started because I wanted to make sure I had the right one. So, so while we're finding, because we want to give you a link to his free workshop that he's doing on Saturday, because we definitely want you to be able to make more money in 5 weeks. So we're going to give you a link to that free workshop. And I love that he's doing this. And so you can get to know Brooks and you get to know his programs, get to know him, get to know what's going on. And then we'll share that with you.
Yep, it's coming right up. Oh, I have a fun anecdote about trolls too, which is really great. Okay, wait, how? Of
course you do. So let us know if you have any questions about anything that we've been talking about or anything, about our programs. We also have the masterclass. If you guys want to learn how to become a reader, you can go to HollywoodGatekeepers.com/free masterclass.
Oh, should I email you the link, Carolyn? I can't put it in the chat.
I think you can put it private chat. You see private chat on your screen?
Oh, private chat. Okay, good. Yep.
Yeah, because it's private.
So this is just
So send it to me there. There we
go. Yeah. So it's it's a simple Google form, and there's going to be a couple cool emails about it coming up this week, and then it'll be a really fun conversation about just tapping into your skills in ways you might not have thought of. Very much have a lot of the same vibe that you're getting.
And it's on Saturday at what time?
Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, and it will be recorded. But definitely try to check it out then, or check it out soon after, because if you're interested in jumping into the program that comes after it, there's probably going to be deadline Sunday night for that. We're going to move quickly because there's been a lot of excitement around it, because people like money and people like being able to make money in ways that's fun for them. And that's the whole idea, is that because my people, writers, are or creatives in general, but like it's this really interesting thing that happens is they're like, yeah, but what motivates me is not money. What motivates me is love and passion and art, and that's beautiful. But like from that place, what happens is they inadvertently push away money opportunities. Mm-hmm. And so and what they can realize, and they kind of, sometimes people even embrace that starving artist sort of thing. So what I'm really good at helping people do is go, no, you can have both. You can be like 100% committed to your art and to helping people and doing that, and actually through that commitment make plenty of money. And it actually makes you an even better storyteller, and it doesn't take away from it. And you're not really helping anybody being the starving artist, because your light shines dimmer that way. You want to allow it to shine bright, so you can help even more people with whatever your perspective is, right? So I have a good story about trolls, and then POV. Is that
need to know about these trolls?
Okay. So here we'll do trolls, and then I'll end with a really fun POV story. Okay. So one thing with trolls, my friends, everybody who's listening to this, you will if you're going to do something at scale, you will get trolled. right? You will get people coming out of the woodwork going, "You shouldn't do it," blah blah blah, or "You, how dare you? You're a schemer, you're a scammer, you're a
Wonka,
whatever."
wonka, wonka.
Yeah, yeah. So here's some hacks to think about that, right? So A, know that it's coming. B, know that it's actually a wonderful threshold crossing, because you know who doesn't get trolled is people who haven't actually put themselves out there yet,
Yes,
right? But
it's a
like,
rite of passage for sure.
so yeah, so it's also but it's probably going to be disconcerting depending how you get trolled and what context. But
Yeah.
like, because you see other people get trolled, you're like, oh yeah, it's whatever, or this and that. But
Right.
like, when it happens to you, it's like, oh, that was me, you know. And it's funny, but you can really make sure you get some support for that sort of thing. But there's definitely things you can do where you just, well, if it's like online comments or something, better just stay away from it until you can ignore it altogether, or maybe come back around it when you can be emotionally differentiated. What's weird is the trolls often don't realize you're actually there reading the comments, so they're really
it's
nasty.
kind of funny to me, but yeah, it's true.
And you're like, yeah, like, yo, I'm standing right here.
I'm right here.
So, but like, if you can do that playfully, it can actually be really fun. But you have to make sure
Yes.
you get clear with it first. And if you're not, then ignore it or support. But the last thing I'll say too is one thing I definitely realize is there's always, sometimes people are just total crazy town, but usually there's a kernel of truth. There's something that I said that was just maybe inelegant in the way that I said it, or it was like, in retrospect I can go, oh, I can see how that was taken in that direction, right?
Mhm.
And so then it's just like, okay, well, thank you for that gift. Then I'll be even more specific about how I'm positioning myself, and there's usually a really nice gift in there after you can get past the
Yes.
feeling of like,
Yeah.
oh my God, they're attacking me. They're gonna they're gonna get me. I'm done forever. And I'm finished. And there's all sorts of crazy feelings that come out.
Yeah, for sure. And it definitely is a rite of passage. And you have to learn, you have to just know that sometimes it's more about them than you. But we also sometimes I get emails like that. Not so much anymore. I think because we're everywhere now, so it's much easier to see that we're sincere. But sometimes I'll get emails or if someone joins our program and they have trouble logging in, and then suddenly they're certain that the whole thing's a scam, which I kind of get if they're having some tech problems. But the minute we respond and they see, hi, it's okay, everything's fine, we're going to get you in, then it's amazing, like the massive shift that they have of like being like, I will not tolerate fraud, to being like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. And it's really, and that's the swing that we're talking about right there, like demonstrated right there, that we want to get to where it's like, instead of being like, oh my God, everything's horrible, this is fraud, they took all my money, this is gonna be terrible, to being like, oh, there's some technical problems. And then, moving on with the next thing or whatever, like no matter how dire it might feel in the moment, being able to try and regulate that, that kind of feeling that we have. And I totally understand it. And there's no judgment in having that, if anybody here is that person, but being, there's no judgment in what we're here to go like, it's okay, we got you, it's all fine. Like, it's all good. Open arms.
No, I would say it's always the troll's projection, right? But it's always also the person that's going, oh, you're the best, you're amazing. They're projecting too. So one interesting thought about that. There's this one guy who I love. He wrote this book years ago about this company in Brazil. He was a musician, and he inherited his dad's like some random industrial business. And he was like 18, 19. The last thing he wanted to do, because he was like a rock star, he wanted to be like a rock star, but like he inherited his business. But he totally flipped it on its head. It was like, well, why are we doing that? And he had all these great, crazy things, and very successful, right? So really amazing, sort of innovative business person. So I followed him for years and loved him, but he had the most genuine, down-to-earth response to somebody that was kind of fawning over him. He literally was like, they were like, oh man, you kind of like how I might have acted if I saw him in person. I love the guy. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, like everything you're saying about me, that's about you. Everything greatness that you're seeing, you spot it, you got it. So like, it's, I wrote that book and whatever and had that experience, but like you responded to that book and you're having that experience. That's all in you. So I really love that for like the trolls and for the fans, that like, yes, we're showing up. Yes, we deserve credit for showing up and being ourselves, but like everything, this goes for everybody watching this, that you see that you like about either one of us, when you spot it, you got it. It's because anything that you feel like is great about either of us, it's because that greatness is in you. And yes, I'm happy that we reminded you of that, but like it's in you. And that's what's most important and empowering for us to remember.
And if we're not resonating with you, there's someone is. But if you're watching still at this point, I think we're pretty.
That's right.
I think
They've
you're
gone deep. They've
one
gone
of the
deep
gang.
into the Kool-Aid.
I think you're in. I think you're one of the gang. But there's always, and you'll go through phases too. There's times there's certain people I like to listen to for certain things. And so I'm just such an avid learner. I love learning. And so I constantly reach out and listen to them. There's some people that I think are amazing. I really admire what they do, but they don't exactly resonate with me. So that's not someone that I would listen to on a regular basis. More power to them. They're helping a whole bunch of people, but they're not my jam. So it's like,
Yes.
it doesn't really matter at all. So I think it really helps. So I can't see who wrote this. Can you speak to being a great story and analyst, but not so much reading, if that makes sense? Other ways to really grasp the script. Like I would love to stage a read out loud with actors and engage people. Great idea. With scripts for all kinds of understanding, like you said, because it's all about human psychology and how we learn by stepping right into the character. And there's no better way to do that than through a good script. Kind of answering your own question. So, yeah, kind of all the things we've already talked about. So speak to a great story analyst without being a reader. Yeah, I mean, that's what we all are. When you ask your friend yesterday, what are you watching? And they gave you a review, they were being a story analyst in that moment. All day long, we do it to all the people we love. Whenever we recommend anything or recommend not to watch something, we are being a story analyst. Yeah. So your point of view is already well in action all the time. Yeah. So do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that dovetails to the main thing about sort of POV, right? That I feel like one thing I'd love for everybody to take away that's listening to this now is that like no other human being ever in the past, present, or future has your specific point of view in terms of the specific challenges you faced, specific movies and shows that you watched, the specific relationships that you had and didn't have. All those things form, there's similarities in everything you've done, but like your whole collection of package of identity and you is in that perspective. And it's so uniquely valuable because of that specificity. And so when you can be really aware of your POV and bring it to an analysis or bring it to the creation of something, that's really what's most special. And that's probably what's going to be most purpose-driven and satisfying for you in your life.
Absolutely. Perfect way to end this. So make sure that you get that link. Join Brooks on Saturday for his free workshop, so you can learn how to make some money in 5 weeks. I think it's going to be fantastic. As writers.
You actually, you know what? I'm going to give you value during the workshop itself. You're going to be your net worth will be slightly more by the end of the workshop if you do one thing specifically during the workshop. So it's
there's a cliffhanger. There's a cliffhanger, folks. I love it. And then if you do want to learn more about being a reader, you can go to HollywoodGatekeepers.com/free masterclass. We have a class there. It talks all about the reading process. So you can do that on your own time whenever it's on demand. So you can do it whenever you'd like. But definitely show up on Saturday for that. It's going to be really fun. Here, I can post that as well. And thank you, Anae. Anae is in here. She's one of our production assistants, and she put the link in there. So, thank you. Someone just put the link. I don't know who that is. Thank you so much. You guys are on it. So yeah, definitely check out both things. And you can just, apply your POV to all of it, whatever it might be, to your life as a person and as an amazing soul that you are, to your life as a writer, to your life as a reader, whatever it might be. So what do you want to leave us with, Brooks? So lovely. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's always such a treat to have you. And we just we need to do this more often. It's so much fun.
Yeah, really, really wonderful. Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll say is think of your favorite moment of this conversation. Like one thing that one of us said that just sparked a deep sense of awe or promise or inspiration or joy or just like connection. And that energy, just take that with you the rest of the day and really reflect on it and really enjoy it. Let it keep coming back to you and bringing you joy.
Love it. Love it so much. Thanks you so much. Thanks, you guys. So great to have you and enjoy. Thank you so much.